Hey guys, if you like this type of sound, we've got an awesome one in store for you, because today we're going to be making the bass patch from TheWeeknd's Is There Someone Else? And we're going to be using Arturia's mini Moog to do just that. Let's get into it. So when you load up the mini Moog, all you need to do is come up to the top left and click New Preset, and it will set everything to its default state for you. The first thing that we need to do is decide on our waveform type for oscillator 1, and you can see that we get some options here, and you use this knob to cycle through them. It's really good to familiarize yourself with the way that the different waveforms sound so that you can identify them when you actually come across a sound that you want to replicate. And to my ears, what the patch sounds like from TheWeeknd is a sawtooth. So we're going to start with a sawtooth, just a normal one. So if we move over to the left a little bit farther here, you can see that we get an option of what's called the range. And this is just the octave that you can choose to work in whenever you're pressing C3. So right now it's on 8. If you go down to 16, now it's an octave below. 32 is an octave below that. And then right here is where we control the volume for the oscillator. So what we're gonna do is combine all three of these oscillators to get us closer to the sound of the patch. I'm gonna keep mine on 8 because I like having C3 be C3 and C2 be C2, etc., and just have it be consistent, okay? All right, so next let's get oscillator 2 going. So we're gonna bring up the volume for oscillator 2, which is the one right below it. And I'm actually gonna keep this as a sawtooth waveform, and I'm also going to keep it at the same range. And you might be wondering, why do you have two oscillators going, at the same time, at the same octave? And the reason is that you can see that it says fine minus 10.76%, meaning that it's 10.76% flat. So when we play this, there's what you might call a beating sound. It's just slightly out of tune, and it just adds more of a rich and complex sound. We're also going to do the same thing with oscillator 3, but this time we're going to keep this an octave below. And you can also see that it's tuned 2.29% sharp. So we've got some, almost like a chorus effect, where we have the copies of the oscillators at different tuning, which gives it, more of a rich and complex sound. If you want to change the percentage that it's sharp or flat, you can hold right click and then drag, and it will change this for you. If you use a left click, it'll just go by semitones. So let's get oscillator 3 going now, and I'm just going to turn this up to 8 again. I'm going to leave this at the same octave, but I'm actually going to change the waveform to be a narrow rectangular. All right, cool. So now we have something a little bit more interesting than just a sawtooth wave. When I listen to the patch in the song, I can hear that there's some downward movement in the frequency range of the sound. Like, it doesn't just stay put like this, right? It goes, do you like that? So that means that we're gonna head over to the filter emphasis section over here on the right. What we need to do is bring down the cutoff frequency all the way down to about 300 hertz. So now when we play a note, it kind of just hangs there at the cutoff frequency and gets there almost immediately, which means that the envelope decay time is way too fast. So let's just increase the decay time to about 300 milliseconds. And as long as the sustain is set at 0 here, which it is by default actually, it'll always take 300 milliseconds to get to the cutoff frequency that we've set. When you look at the top right here, you'll see a knob that says amount of contour, and that's essentially how drastic the envelope moves in the frequency range, how high it will go from the cutoff frequency. So if we increase it, you'll see that it starts all the way up at 20,000 hertz or whatever. But if we keep it at about 40%, the distance is much smaller. One kind of interesting element of the bass patch that I heard in the song is that each of the notes sound like they're roughly the same length. So instead of editing each of the MIDI notes individually, what I can do, we can come down to the loudness contour section on the bottom here and drag the sustain all the way down to 0. Oh no, what happened? Well, the decay time is much too short, so that's why we can't hear anything. So let's bring that up to 300 milliseconds. Wow, is everything 300 milliseconds today? So regardless of how long I play the note, it's the exact same. All right, are you guys ready for the most magical part of the patch yet? Head up to the top right next to the volume knob here, and you'll see a unison switch, and we're going to push the switch on. So we go from 2 If you need a little refresher on what Unison does, it just adds detuned copies to your synth to make it more rich and complex. So now we've gotten ourselves a lot closer to the end product, but what I'm gonna do is head up to the top right here where it says Advanced, and that opens up this section where you get control of some other interesting parts of the synth. But go down to the bottom tab here on the left where it says Effects, and I'm gonna turn off the vocal filter and the delay just so it's not using up any extra processing. But what I am gonna do is just give it a little bit of chorus here. I find with patches like this, if you add just a little bit of chorus, it kind of has a nice way of gluing the whole sound together. Let's take a listen to what we've got so far. This is the point where I want to start doing some of the detail work using some effects from Ableton, but you can of course use whatever DAW suits your fancy. So I've got a little compressor here, taking care of some of the more major peaks. I've also got a saturator. I've got this on 50% wet right now. This is something I added just doing some listening from the original record. It sounded to me like there's a bit of saturation going on. I've also got some EQ, and this is pretty cool. I don't know if you've ever used this scale function in Ableton, but you can actually, if you reduce the scale to minus 100%, you can apply the opposite curve. So let me do that and show you what I've taken away and added. Brightened it up a little bit and took away some of those mids. And this last utility is actually really crucial. And what I've done is taken the width from 100%, which is, you know, a normal stereo image, and I've brought it down to, I think it was about 29%. The reason I did this is because when I did some analysis on the original song, which I will do with you right now, I'm gonna solo the original song and I'm going to just listen to the sides or the difference between the left and right channels. So you can just hear a hair of it in the stereo image, and this could have come from a lot of different places. But what I decided to do was when we added the unison, it really created a sort of a wide stereo image. So I just reduced it so it's a lot more narrow and sitting kind of where you'd expect the bass to sit in the mix. One sort of unorthodox part about this patch that I really liked from the song is that it sounds to me like there's almost two basses happening at the same time. One of them is the bass that we just made, and then another one is a very similar sounding one, but it's just occupying that sub range, and it has a slightly different melody. So what I'm gonna do is just highlight this track, press Command D to duplicate it, and let's call this, I'm gonna rename it Bias Sub. I duplicated what we already had because I wanted it to have a similar sonic quality in terms of the waveform and sort of the envelopes, but what I'm actually gonna do is bring the sustain all the way up to, I don't know, 8 or so it really hangs there. We're gonna bring the contour back down. We're gonna bring the cutoff down on just a hair. Hope you're at least using headphones so you can hear all that sub goodness. And now watch what happens when we actually play those two together. So it adds a lot of depth to the sound, but one thing that you can do to make it even more clear is to high pass the original bass that we did. And just let the sub be responsible for all of the sub harmonics. So look, now you have an awesome analog plucky bass sound that you can use in your own music, or you can use it in a cover, whatever you want to do with it. It's fine by me. I hope you learned something about this synth and use it more often. I have so much fun using it myself just to make bass patches or whatever else. If you have any sounds that you want me to try to recreate from your favorite songs, let me know down in the comments below. I'm always up for a challenge, so do let me know. And until next time, we'll see you on the next In The Beat. Take care.